Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Behind the Group podcast. I am DJ Keo.
And I am Basil Barrington, and we are back with another classic film review, a classic sci fi film review. We are
Mhm.
talking about The War of the Worlds, the 1953 version. I think the more interesting thing is this here. This movie was made, it was released in 1953. The
Yeah.
budget for this movie in 1953, $2 million. $2 billion would have been crazy. But $2 million.
What's the inflation like that for that time? Like, what do you think that would have cost?
Today's
Mhm.
money, this film would have been worth $140 million.
That's crazy. That is crazy. And I have to say, I watched this a long, long time ago, and having rewatched it today, and like thinking about it versus today's movies, this is a crazy blockbuster movie. Like this is on par with these superstar movies where it costs 200 something million to make. Like it's a visually for because you got to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
If there's a tank there on screen, someone drove a tank, a real one,
In
onto the lot
1953, right,
in
exactly.
1953. Yeah. If there's a truck, that's a real truck. If there's a building, that's a real building.
Hmm.
So they had to build a lot of this stuff, and you have it on the lot and everything like that. But like for what they were able to accomplish in 1953, they damn well deserved to win that Oscar for special effects.
They got an
They
Oscar for special
deserved it.
effects. They were
That
nominated for 5 Oscars in 1954 for
mm,
this film, and they won Best Special Effects.
yeah, they deserve it. Like
Yeah.
think about the stuff they were doing in this back then, the amount of work and effort it took to have buildings blow up and all this other stuff. Because it's a quantum leap, like how Star Wars was a quantum leap in 1979 when it came out,
Mhm.
versus what they're able to do now with computers and the LCD wall and
Right.
all this other stuff. What they did in this movie was a quantum leap for movies back then.
Yeah.
Like the having like the spaceships, they're hovering, and it didn't look like it was on a string. It kind of looked like it's superimposed. That's more interesting. The lasers, and I was cracking me up. Like, old movies like this, rather than people getting shot or whatever, they just disappeared. Whenever you got hit with the laser, or whatever, it just disappeared. This is easier.
This is like, yo, listen, the okay, so how when these meteors like hit the earth and they just hit in this one
Mhm,
specific small town, Pasadena in California, right?
mhm.
Speaking of Pasadena, like the church version, when they shot like when they were shooting the film, the film shot, I mean the church shot, right? That was actually shot
Yeah,
inside of a church in Pasadena City, right? Pasadena,
yeah, yeah.
California, right? Everything
Mhm.
else was just a studio set.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It
You
was
can
a
tell
lot.
because the background looked kind of kind of fake.
The kind of fake. And
The
so
skyline.
once they, figured out like, hey, this is like here, the one thing
Mhm,
that kind of confused me was in the beginning when they were talking
mhm.
about the Martians, right? Um, how did they know that the Martians' land, their planet, was basically being exhausted, and the Martians needed to find another planet?
Well, that's from the book. Like that's the authors inputting
Right,
that information in there,
right,
not the actors.
right.
They guesstimated these must have come from Mars.
Mhm.
Mars. Like they didn't actually know. They were guesstimating. They have no idea where that.
Right.
They didn't have satellites like we had today. We see
Mhm.
what's going on out there, or like the Hubble telescope. They have no idea where this thing came from.
Nah,
They guessing. It's got to be from
exactly.
Mars.
And see, I know this was like in 1953, but the thing with movies and TV shows, when I watch them, I'm just like, when I see things that they did not explain at all or not well, I'm just like, let us know.
Yeah,
Well, how
yeah.
did this happen? That's
I
another part of the movie.
I love the old movies because remember with the day the Earth stood still, they
Mhm.
always have like a scientist or some smart person to give you background and information about what's
Yeah.
happening.
Mhm.
Because like you can't have like the Sylvia Van Buren like here's what happened with the Mars. Like you gotta wait to what's the scientist have to say. Like you gotta give it to some expert and he's gonna tell you what's going on for everybody. And I love how they explain what's gotta be like a gravitational pull from the whatever. Like
Like
they
everyone
give you
else knows
terms.
what the heck he's talking about.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, okay, it's the gravitational pull. Okay, guys, let's go to the sock hop. I don't know, whatever
Yeah,
and
he's like,
shit.
all right, yeah,
you
let's
know,
say.
there are a lot of laugh out loud moments of this movie. The first one is, you
Hilarious.
know, when the three guys were like just manning the meteor out. They were there, right. And then they were like,
The
well,
extra Mexican.
right. They were like, yes, exactly, right. Because you saw no black folks in this movie. You saw like a Latino. That's it, right?
That was a big deal for cultural diversity
That
right
was a
there.
big deal, right? And so when they were like, well, hey, maybe it wants to talk to us. Maybe we should go talk to it. And then they went and got like a white flag, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
and one guy was like, the one guy was saying, "Hey, open up! Come on, let us in there! Come on, open up!" And I was just like, "Really?" And
I
then
was cracking up. There's so many hilarious scenes in there.
and then the Martians they just opened fire, and then when the other guy, the professor, Forrester came and
Mhm.
with the other people,
Yeah.
and they were just like vaporized, like
The outline.
I know it was just
It's
like
like a black outline.
and I was just like, oh man, I was laughing so loud and so hard on that joint, and I was just like, this is crazy. And then another ridiculous sort of thing is this, and I said this offline. I was like, okay. So after all this stuff went down, the professor was like,
Mhm,
I'm gonna go stay in a hotel. The pastor was like, no, you can come stay with me and his daughter,
mhm.
right?
That's
Um,
his niece, his niece.
well, he's staying with a woman in their house.
Yeah.
Let's just say that, right? And he was
The
like,
taboo.
hey, what is there to do around here on a Saturday evening? And then the pastor said, there is a square dance later on tonight. So the question I had for you offline was
I
this
lost
here.
it. I
I
lost it.
lost it. The question I had for you is, have you ever been to a square dance, Keo?
No, I've never seen one in person. I grew up down south, alright? I have been
Mhm,
down south.
mhm.
I have not been to square dance before.
Have you ever been to a sock hop?
No, I have not. I've seen them though. I've seen both of them though, but no,
So
I've
okay,
never
and
been.
I was like, when he said a square dance, and I was thinking about a sock hop, and I'm just like,
Mhm,
okay, a sock hop is more heathenistic than a square dance.
mhm.
You know, square dance, you have like a band doing like a call and response with music and everything. This was
Okay.
so corny for real, super corny,
So, yeah, it's a cha-cha
super corny.
slide for
And then inside of the square dance, everyone's watch, the person's hearing aid, like anything that had a battery,
yeah,
magnet,
just
whatever,
stop working.
it just stopped working. And everyone was like, hey, my watch stopped too. Hey, mine too. And I'm just like, yes, everyone's watch stopped. And the guy's hearing aid also isn't working, you know? And then the professor, because he's so smart, he was like, does anyone have a pen or, paper clip? And then he took his watch off and saw that it was, magnetized. And I was just
Great
like,
time, yeah.
dude,
I I love the way they worked science into this movie
yeah,
because, like, they had to explain things for the because the guy think about, like, this audience at the time hasn't heard of stuff that's common for us today. You say some kind of magnetic thing, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, magnets, whatever." Back then, that's like a sciencey nerd would be thinking about stuff like that.
right.
Everybody else does not care. So
Mhm.
they got to explain. Well, the spaceship seems to be floating from gravitational pull from the whatever, whatever. Like they had this and the laser beam and like they explain away like the camera light system. It's like an eyeball that looks like this, and they had to explain like how the camera would see them, like the little things that we just take for granted. Like, oh yeah, it's like an iPhone camera. Okay, cool. Like you know what I'm saying? Like they had to tell the audience. And like, all the old movies do the same thing.
Yeah.
They have to have some smart person, some scientist explain to you what
Yeah.
is happening and
hmm
how. Like the remember that little movie watching with the rocket? Like, how's this rocket work? How do
hmm
we move forward in time when it went through the
Right.
window? Like that similar kind of stuff. Somebody smart has to be like with glasses, like, hey, this
right.
is how this thing works. I love that because it's adorable that things that we just expect as normal today, people are like, "What the hell is this? What's sorcery?" Like,
Listen, so the spaceships, the Martians, dude, they were just swissing people up
mm,
indiscriminately, like, like they tried to
yeah.
drop a nuclear bomb on them. I guess it was strategic. It was a strategic nuclear
Oh,
weapon,
they wiped out California. California's done for.
meaning that
They
they
moved back.
exactly, meaning that the radiation may hit a 5 mile radius opposed to a 100 mile radius, right? But
Yeah,
Joe, the
yeah.
Martians just blew that joint out of the sky. It was that was it, right? And then they were just
Yeah.
killing people the whole nine. Oh, here's the funniest part of this movie is this: when a professor and the sheriff and a police officer rolled up and they saw like the
Oh,
guys
yeah.
that were vaporized, and then a police officer saw the Martians. He got in his car and he left the professor and the sheriff
He's
there. He
like
bounced. But the Martians
he's
were
like
like, "You're not going anywhere, baby." And they vaporized the car, the person, and I was just like, "Oh wow!" So this thing is just like they can't speak to it. The way the
Mhm.
military was shooting at it, they didn't even
It's
look
doing
like
nothing.
weapons. But they didn't
That
even look like weapons. They looked like fireworks.
Yeah, that scene when they told the military, like, "Open fire,"
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, damn, they got tanks, they got rocket launchers, they are doing
Hmm.
everything on this." He was doing nothing. That I think that was pretty impressive, that shot with the army actually shooting at it, because it looked like it was a lot of people there. As far as special effects goes, it looked like that was a lot of firepower. They showed how much firepower they had. And you know what is interesting about the movie? The movie for the first half is kinda silly,
Yeah,
like, it's basic, and then death and destruction in the second half.
yeah,
Like, the carnage in the second half is wild compared to the first. Like, you don't think it's the same movie. It's like a sequel or something like that. The first they got square dances, he's making breakfast, this is just silly stuff is going on. She's screaming uncontrollable, like, just silly things, and then they're just dropping nukes and bombs all the rest of the movie.
yeah.
I could I
Mhm.
I was shocked about how violent the second. I forgot, like I've seen it so long ago, but I forgot how violent the second half of this movie is.
Yeah,
For to do this back in 1950 something, they had
53. I
buildings
know.
collapsing on people. Like they had people all up in wheelchairs and their
Mhm.
arms all broken. Like it was a mess.
I,
Yeah,
I
a church caved in.
I also think what a coincidence that when the professor and the girl, the woman, found
Mhm.
this barn or
Sylvia.
farmhouse, right?
Mhm.
And they were like, hey, okay, hey, are you hungry? Next thing you know, they had eggs, they had bacon, they had milk, they had like orange juice, they had grits. She was making pancakes. She made like a brunch in this house
Yeah,
that they
full
never
on
even
brunch,
went to, right? Exactly.
cinnamon toast. Like,
Cinnamon toast with a little bit of sugar on top.
right?
It's just like, dude, like, what is going on? Salmon cakes. I'm like, yo, this is what is up? Strawberries. I mean, like, they just walked into a barn that it doesn't belong to them.
Random barn found
And
a
then
cornucopia of food.
now all of a sudden they are making breakfast, a brunch. And sat down too, like had a napkin, like, the whole nine. I was just like, wow, okay, this is weird. That was the first half of the movie. The second half
Yeah.
was the Swiss cheesing.
Death and destruction and terror.
Yeah. And you know what else was kind of interesting about this movie, right? And this is
Mhm.
1953, right? Dude,
Yeah.
no one could act back then. No one.
Alright, it's over it. Everybody's overacting.
You know?
That's the classics. Everyone overacts.
Yeah. Mhm. It's
Like
just like,
when she's in the thing and she's screaming, he's like, "Pull yourself together," and she's like, "Oh,
right.
okay."
Just like, really? And then the military, the world does not have an answer how to defeat these Martians, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So they're just sitting
They're
back
wrecking
and like
shop.
letting the Martians basically destroy the Earth, right?
Yeah, they wreck shop on the planet, man.
They
They
do not
wreck
have
shop.
anything. These Martians, they ran in threes, so they were able to like
Mhm.
just go through different cities all over the world and just like destroy people. They started landing a lot more Martians on Earth. And
Mhm.
so they were coordinated, like, just Swiss cheese in different countries up all over the place. And
Yeah.
again, the military did not have an answer. So how
Yeah.
does this whole war stop? Because it was kind of
It's bacteria.
right, but the thing about it is how it ended, because that's how it ended as well. It ended where
Mhm.
a ship went down and then they found out that, I mean, the Martians came into this atmosphere, and there was a bacteria which Americans, or I should say humans on Earth, are immune to, but the Martians
Yeah.
were not, and that's how they got destroyed. Not because militaries from around the world figured out how to take this Martian or the Martians down, because in
Yeah.
Independence Day they knew how to do that. Remember?
Yeah, computer hacking.
Right.
You know what? I like that the Martians defeated themselves rather than somebody was hacking a computer, typing in a
Yeah.
straight line
Mhm.
really fast. Like I
Right.
like the fact
Right.
that they got lucky and that saved the day instead of, oh, somebody was hacking the hack and that's
Right.
how they got in there. Like
Mhm.
that's just ridiculous. Because they
Right.
realistically, if some other planet tried to invade us, it's a wrap, man. We ain't doing nothing. This
You,
is gonna be a slaughter.
if someone
Anybody
made,
who's advanced enough to have like a hyperdrive, whatever, to fly over here, we're not doing anything.
yeah,
Like, it was real talk.
there is if someone made the latest and greatest version of the War of the Worlds,
Mhm.
opposed to a bacteria destroying the Martians, they could upload a virus like an Independence Day, like a bacteria, but we're going to call it a virus, right? Into
Mhm.
the Martians and they could be destroyed that way. It's the same thing. They're being destroyed by a virus, a
Yeah,
bacteria, it's the same thing, So I don't
yeah.
know, man, but this is this is what the third or fourth um classic film we have watched and man, these classic films are
I like the
pretty
classics.
awesome.
I like the classics, man. I really do.
The,
Because
the
you know what? They're they're more original stories, and they're doing amazing things with little to no money
Yes.
compared to what we could do today. Because
Mhm.
we have uh we have a too much riches in our hands. You know what I'm saying? Like we could you say I want to put somebody on Mars, no problem. Got a planet, spaceship, whatever you need in there, we got you. You can do one your monster in Mars, no problem. To cook that up in a laptop. I can my laptop right here. I can make a monster, throw that in a movie, shot in my iPhone that look just as good as anything they shot in
Yep.
19 whatever.
Mhm.
Like that, we have an embarrassment of riches at our disposal with what we're able to produce, and I think that the movies in back in the day when you were limited to what you could do, it was more so about the storyline and making an interesting story versus, well, we'll just throw a fix it in post. We just throw a monster in there and call it a day, and we'll just end it with explosion, fight, chase, and whatever. Like you had to be more tactful and logical about what kind of movie you're making versus today, and it shows. Like these movies that the old movies we watch, they're more interesting. They could be silly and corny, but they're still more interesting than a lot of movies I see today.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It's what's really interesting is, when let's just take for instance our iPhone. You don't have to
Mhm.
text, you don't have to type a text message. You can just like record it and the phone will record your voice and then like, translate it into
Mhm.
text, right? You can do the same
Yeah.
thing when you're doing a web search. You can just like hit the microphone and it'll search, you have
Mhm.
autocomplete, right? The point I'm trying to make is, oh, and one other thing too, when you talk about like the DJ space, right? The technology
Mhm.
that we have as DJs could make us lazy. And that's the point I'm trying to make. All the technology
Mhm.
we have makes us sort of lazy,
It's
because we don't
very
have to
lazy.
do certain things, like with DJing, you may have the sync button, but
Mhm.
people don't understand that that's not 100%. You still nudging left and right, and
Yeah.
even when you want Apple or like Google to, translate your voice into text, you still may have to go in and make some edits just to make sure that the text is solid, right? The
Mhm.
technology is
Yeah.
making us lazy. When you look at the film industry, right? And it's all
Mhm.
about like if you talk about Transformers and you have the big explosions and everything else and all this crazy stuff, right?
Mhm.
People think in Hollywood, these writers and directors and showrunners, they think that some of this big bang bang stuff is that's what we want. But when you take these very rudimentary movies that were made in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, they did a
Mhm.
lot with a small budget.
Yeah, next to nothing compared to what we have today.
Right. And it just goes to show you that, yeah, you know what? $2 million in 53 was a lot of money, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But now the film is on the National Registry. It did win
Mhm.
Best Special Effects for an Oscar, The
Mhm.
film, a lot of other stuff came from this film. This wasn't
Yeah.
like because a lot of people were saying this is the original sci fi movie. And obviously it wasn't because Like I said before, in 1930, you had Just Imagine, and then everyone else,
Mhm,
some people say the first original sci fi was Frankenstein.
mhm,
But
yeah.
again, the point is, we have all this technology and we're not using it correctly. You said
Or we're
that,
relying too heavily on it.
right, and you were saying that with Dune, they basically
Mhm.
went out into the desert and built the set.
Yeah, they built
Smart.
giant sets for that
Right.
movie, and it
And
feels
see,
different.
right. And see, that's where, like, again, if you have the technology, I kind of think that you also have the creativity to use that technology in a way that's going to be engaging for the end
Yeah.
user, people like us watching movies and TV series, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you're asking people for money to watch this stuff. But a lot of these movies and TV series that we watch, complete garbage.
Well, a perfect example of this is Andor and Boba Fett. Both of these 2 TV shows are in the same universe,
Hmm.
technically, right? Boba Fett was filmed on LCD wall, and Andor, they built live sets and they went on location.
Much better
And
looking.
the 2 shows feel night and day
Yeah.
because of the
Hmm.
fact that they had to go on location for one of them, and the other one where they're just sitting in a room somewhere. It feels night and day. The acting is different, the tone is different. There's so much different factors because of, well, they had to actually go there, and they didn't have 24 hours a day with perfect lighting. They had to get this thing exactly right at 2 o'clock, or else they're gonna wait 2 weeks and have to film it again then. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Like, there's more at stake, so they took it more serious, and so the show just came out better.
That's
The
right.
same thing with original Star Wars. They were on location. They're in the Tanzania, in the middle of the desert, filming this stuff. They weren't on a
Yep.
green screen or whatever. Like, they were there,
Yeah,
and
man.
it feels different.
Mhm.
And I think that the ability to just do anything at a drop of a button is kind of, it's hurt the quality for a lot of these things, because your
Yeah.
creativity is just, well, we'll throw a monster in there, whatever. Like,
Right.
you don't
Exactly.
have to be tactful about what you're writing, what you're trying to say, how you want to convey this thing to the people. That's not important, because just press a button, fix it in Adobe Premiere, whatever, like Avid, just
it,
fix
it
it.
it's almost like
Throw something in there.
they have templates for this sort of thing, like, oh, we need a monster, use the monster template. Like, oh, we need
Yeah.
a villain, use the villain template. You need a black villain or a white villain, black, use that template.
Yeah, yeah.
It's there,
You're
dude.
right.
it's,
It's a
it's all right
template.
there, you know
Everything's
what I'm saying?
templated.
It's a template, man.
Yeah.
But Joe, the war of the worlds, 1953. This film was
Mhm.
crazy. I love this film. I'm
I
totally
loved
getting
it.
into these 50
Great.
joints. These if
Yes.
you go on Amazon and you type in classic sci-fi 50s,
Mhm.
they're gonna give you everything.
Yeah. There's so many good movies though
So
from
many
that
good
time.
movies. What are you going to rate The War of the Worlds from 1953?
I'll give it a 9, because the scope and scale for this movie is ridiculous. Everybody takes for granted that, oh, we could put a green screen here and throw something in there. You had to do this for real. And to take for like silly, square dance into death and destruction raining from above
Hmm.
is wild for a movie from 1950. That is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
they got the scale. I forgot how much stuff they destroyed in making this movie, and the different locations and the places, whatever. Like this, it it's high quality cinema for me. This was a great movie. I loved it.
This was a really good movie. I am giving it a 9 as well. Um, when I was looking at this movie, I was thinking about the time travelers, because the time
Mhm.
travelers had us in three or four different scenes, right?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
looking at this here and I'm just like, okay, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a studio set right here. The acting
There's
is
a lot
pretty
of
good.
locations.
The spaceships, the Martians look like in 1953, they look like they were like, that was high tech,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it's
In
very high tech.
1953, right? And I'm just like, this
Yeah.
is high tech in 53. How were they in 1953 getting these spaceships to hover over land and everything else, right? In
Mhm.
1953, this
Yeah,
is not
you guys
digital.
superimpose
You're
like a lot of stuff that they
splicing tape
did.
and everything.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff they did wasn't invented, or they had to rework something that, was a regular thing that you do and make it into this whole thing. Like there's a scene where they had like a flashlight and like that's a complicated thing to do. Like you're still well lit, but this one spot's brighter than everything else. Like
Right.
the tight beam on it, like this,
Hmm.
just complicated things that we just take for granted. Like, just throw an LED right there, call it a day. Like they're using like these tungsten lights that are like 2,000 watts or whatever, like
And weigh a
they're
thousand
a million
pounds.
degrees.
Right. Hmm.
If it fell on you, you're gonna die.
You're dead for real. You're dead.
Yeah, this is stuff they're working with. Like,
Yeah.
this
So
is fascinating, man. It's
and
really
that was high
fascinating.
tech stuff back in '53. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we this was listen, man. This is these again. We watched three or four old classic films.
Mhm.
We have not given one of those classic films anything less than 8.5. Not less than
Yeah.
an 8.5.
There's definitely terrible movies back then, but there's a lot of really good gems too. And I
Yeah.
think that's the factor here, where there's more terrible movies today than there is really good movies.
Yeah, that's
Like
true,
it's
man.
basically flipped.
So, The War of the Worlds, 1953, we both gave this movie a 9 because it was an excellent movie from the 50s.
Mhm.
We're really getting into these classic sci-fi films, and we're gonna have a lot more to come too
Yeah, we
because
gotta yeah, for
so,
sure. If you have anyone that recommendations we need to watch, leave a comment below. Let us
yeah.
know.
And I'm okay with like paying, $4 to watch a movie if that's the
Yeah,
case.
that's fine.
That's not
Yeah.
a problem. Well, there you have it, another episode of the Behind the Groove podcast. I am Basil Barrington.
I am DJ Keo.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And until next time, peace.
All right.